50 years doesn't seem like a very long time in the vast scheme of things, but it's enough time for things to have drastically changed. 2016 was a big year for Chrissy Metz. The differences between the late 1960s and today go beyond the obvious, such as the astonishing technological advances that have been made since then. The NBC show she stars in, This Is Us, premiered and was met with instant success. Beauty standards were also shockingly different, reflecting the turbulence of the era. Although this wasn't her first acting role, with previous work including a role on American Horror Story, This Is Us was the project to bring Metz the praise she deserves. Playing Kate, a woman who works for her brother and is struggling through her personal weight loss goals, Metz's character is vulnerable, and viewers are given a close look into her day-to-day life. While the show has been in the spotlight, Metz has opened up about her own struggle with weight loss in her personal life. Here are some of the most surprising things that men found attractive 50 years ago. Lighter skin racism was rampant in the 1960s, although the civil rights movement helped to create significant change by the end of the decade. Anti-miscegenation laws, which had prevented people in several states from marrying those of another race, were struck down in 1967. In each and every interview, she seems so down to earth and grateful for what life has brought her. In spite of the reforms made in the 1960s, racial prejudice was still prevalent. She keeps it real, which feels like a breath of fresh air in an industry that does not always do the same. By the 1960s, the Miss America pageant still didn't allow African American contestants. Let's take a look at Metz's own weight loss journey, along with the positivity and gratitude she brings to every day of life. She's struggled with her weight since childhood. Metz's weight is something she has dealt with her entire life. Speaking with The Hollywood Reporter, she said, "I was born chubby, and as I got older, at different times in my life I was thinner or more active or playing sports, but I was definitely always a chubbier kid." In 1968, a Miss Black America pageant was held on the same day as the Miss America pageant in response to the organization's discrimination. "My friends could eat whatever they wanted to, but I knew that as a kid if I ate certain things I would totally gain weight." It would be another 2 years before an African American woman, Cheryl Brown, won a state title in the Miss America pageant competition. Even within the African American community, a preference for lighter skin was apparent, although this slowly began to change in the 1960s with people embracing their skin color. "I had to be really cognizant of what I ate." Metz has called being on a show with flashbacks to her character's childhood heartbreaking. Metz opened up more with THR, discussing how she understands Kate's struggles and her relationship with her mom, Rebecca, played by Mandy Moore. "Things are a little better today, but there is still discrimination against those with darker skin." A 2016 Time article said even in modern times, dark skin is demonized and light skin wins the prize, because of the deeply entrenched racism of the United States. Rail-thin bodies. For a time, it looked like fuller figures would be, if not the dominant ideal of beauty, at least an accepted standard. In the 1950s and early 1960s, voluptuous women like Marilyn Monroe were cultural icons. Still, there was also a significant move toward slimness, wrote Sarah Grogan in Body Image, Understanding Body Dissatisfaction in Men, Women and Children. "I remember going to Weight Watchers when I was like 11. I was the youngest person in the damned room and it was awkward." As the decade progressed, the slim trend became more pronounced, becoming particularly acute when the fashion model Twiggy became the role model for a generation of young women. As time went on, models became thinner and thinner, wrote Grogan. Flat chests. As models became thinner, curves became less desirable. "My mom was trying to figure it out, but it's a process." It was in the late 1960s when the obsession with eliminating cellulite began. Linda Przybyszewski wrote in The Lost Art of Dress, "The women who once made America stylish that at this time, curvaceous women were passed over in favor of underweight teenagers." The desire to be thin led to a preoccupation with weight, especially among younger girls. Before the 1920s, teenagers worried about becoming better people, wrote Przybyszewski. By the 1960s, however, weight loss became the primary obsession. Flat butts. The desire for flatter chests correlated with an obsession for smaller butts. Kate wants her mom to be happy with her.
Przybyszewski wrote that the fear of cellulite caused women to do anything they could to eliminate what they identified as water, wastes, and fat trapped inside women's hips and thighs. One woman who was written about in Vogue magazine in the late 1960s managed to reduce her 39-inch hips down to 34 inches through exercise, standing correctly, and using a special rolling pin. Such regimens were typical in the late 1960s. If you didn't want to rub your butt yourself, wrote Przybyszewski, you hired a masseuse to do it for you. The desire for more boyish figures was not entirely to please men or to conform to fashion. Battleground, the media, edited by Robin Anderson and Jonathan Allen Gray, noted that the changing shape of women's bodies has in many ways served to reflect larger cultural values. Throughout history, a thin, straight figure was prized at times when women were striving to demonstrate their equality. Exposed legs in fashion, a history from the 18th to the 20th century. Akiko Fukai wrote that the young found that displaying their physique was the most effective means of setting themselves apart from the older generation. The miniskirt came into vogue as bare legs, developed through various conceptual stages in the 1960s. As hemlines rose, more attention was paid to the length and shape of a woman's legs. In women of the 1960s, more than miniskirts, pills and pop music, author Sheila Hardy wrote that many women felt they did not have the legs for a miniskirt. The emphasis 1960s fashion placed on women's legs also influenced shoe styles. And Rebecca just wants her daughter to be happy, and, of course, not be made fun of and just live a normal life. Tall, pointed boots came into fashion, offsetting the short skirts of the era. Androgyny coinciding with the preference for more boyish figures was the rise of unisex clothing and androgynous styles. No matter what, somebody is going to pick on you for something. This echoed a similar trend from the 1920s, when androgyny began to be associated with the search for greater independence for women, wrote Rebecca Arnold in Fashion, Desire and Anxiety, Image and Morality in the 20th Century. It's a complicated dynamic and it is heartbreaking. Acting came up unexpectedly in her early 20s. Metz was a preschool teacher. Arnold wrote that the rise of androgyny in the 1960s helped to denote freedoms gained and the rejection of a preceding claustrophobic femininity. Perhaps even more interesting is that this inclination towards androgyny was also adopted by men. Then one day, everything changed. As described by Marie Claire, Metz took her sister to an audition, and ran into an old teacher who encouraged her to audition as well. Metz had doubts. PBS noted that, for a brief time, mostly in 1968, unisex was everywhere, and with it came a fair amount of confusion in the media. The piece went on to quote Everett Matlin, who, in 1968 wrote in the Chicago Tribune that the whole male-female relationship is confused. Traditional gender roles were beginning to evolve at this time, which Matlin believed could lead to a healthier climate. The Lolita look. The suppression of women's curves led to the popularity of what Imagination, the American counterculture of the 1960s and 70s, edited by Peter Bronstein and Michael William Doyle, called a prepubescent look. Live, young-looking Lolita types like Twiggy dominated the fashion world. This look of exaggerated youthfulness expressed the associated sensibility that maturity, in dress or behavior, was a dirty word, a sign of premature death, and therefore something to be warded off as long as possible. According to the Mancunian, the 1960s have today become a symbol for the social conflict between the old and the new. The Lolita look embodied the spirit of the era, representing youth and vigor. Going braless. The rebellion against traditional gender norms was also evidenced in women's undergarments. She described this feeling during the interview, saying, "In my heart, I was like, yes, I would love to, but I was too afraid of my own shadow." But she took the chance, and it paid off. By the late 1960s, many women were going braless as a political, protest move symbolizing freedom and rejection of traditional views of femininity, wrote the Lala. Fashion designer Yves Saint Laurent contributed to making going braless not just a form of protest but also a fashion trend. She received a call the next day, and less than a year later she found herself headed to Los Angeles to audition for pilot season. His sheer designs were always modeled by women who wore no undergarments beneath them. This, too, was a political statement. Dazed wrote that the decision was less about pleasing the onlooker, and more about asserting equality between the sexes. Long, straight hair. The time period was noted for a departure from formality and tradition.
Her mom later reminisced on the moment with Marie Claire, saying about her daughter, she said, "Mom, I'm going to live my dream." Good for Metz for following those dreams. She had to sit on the sidelines first when she first came to Los Angeles. Metz was able to see acting from a different viewpoint, that of a talent agent. As described by Marie Claire, she became her agent's assistant after auditioning for roles for a few years. Although a job, it wasn't Metz's reason for coming to LA. As she said during the interview, "I was like, this isn't fair, I didn't come here for that." She continued to act, but working at the talent agency became Metz's full-time job. In Fresh Lipstick, Redressing Fashion and Feminism, Linda M. Scott wrote that there was a preference for long, straight hair in the late 1960s. Many men also wore their hair long at this time. She eventually became an agent, but still wanted to see acting through. As she discussed with Harper's Bazaar during an interview, scheduling auditions for the talent was like watching your boyfriend take out another woman every single day. Luckily Metz did not give up. She continued to audition, and, as everyone knows, it worked out. It took panic to make a change a few years before This Is Us premiered. She took her weight loss goal to an extreme. The changing hairstyles weren't just about following fashion. She shared with People that before moving to Los Angeles, she lost 50 pounds on the recommendation of her then manager. For many, they were also acts of rebellion against the highly constructed female hairdos and very short male haircuts of the previous generation. Subservience. The 1960s might have been a time of change, but ads from the era show that women were still expected to be homemakers and sex objects. In spite of the great strides made towards gender and racial equality, women still did not have the same rights as men. She then gained back 100 pounds due to depression and eating my feelings. It took a trip to the hospital on her 30th birthday due to a panic attack to make her rethink her strategy. Even by the end of the decade, it was legal for a bank to deny an unmarried woman a credit card. Married women were often required to have their husbands co-sign. Some states still banned women from serving on juries. When it came to higher education, attending an Ivy League school was incredibly rare for women in this decade. She told the magazine, "I was so gung-ho, I lost 100 pounds." The University of Pennsylvania and Cornell both allowed women to attend as of the 1870s, but only in special circumstances. In less than 5 months. All I did was eat a 2,000-calorie diet and walk 20 minutes a day. After getting to a better place, she snatched up her role in American Horror Story. She played a character who required her to wear a fat suit. This was also a big moment for Metz. It was sobering. I thought, what if I become that heavy and can't walk around or get stuck in the doorframe? I was like, I don't want this for me. This awareness has led Metz to become a voice for those who may be uncomfortable talking about body image issues. Yale and Princeton didn't start accepting women until 1969, while Harvard, Brown, and Dartmouth held out until the 1970s. Columbia didn't offer admission to women until 1981. In The Feminine Mystique, published in 1963, Betty Friedan summed up the frustration of the generation, writing, "A woman today has been made to feel freakish and alone and guilty if, simply, she wants to be more than her husband's wife." Sobriety. A lot of people envision the 1960s as a decade-long booze fest where day drinking, especially at work, was the norm. While this is partially true, it was far more acceptable for men to indulge in multiple alcoholic beverages each day than women. From her time on This Is Us, she's learned just what kind of effect she is having on the show's fans. More and more women were moving away from conventional gender stereotypes, but women who drank frequently were seen as decidedly unfeminine. You don't realize that somebody who's average or even very fit could relate to someone who's overweight. A glass of wine with dinner or a cocktail on the weekend was acceptable, but getting drunk was not. Warning women not to drink too much was not just a societal pressure, but one that was backed up by public service announcements of the day as well as the mainstream media. But it's not about our size, it's how we look at ourselves and how we feel about ourselves, she said. Even her bank account was suffering after Metz's big break on American Horror Story. The role ended and she was back where she started. "People think of the woman drunk as an old hag," warned the Saturday Evening Post in 1962. Among men, heavy drinking is often taken as a sign of virility, and the phrase, "drunk as a lord," is a tribute. No one ever said approvingly, "She was drunk as a lady." That sentiment still remained true by the end of the decade. Drinking in excess may have been taboo for women looking to attract a man, but smoking was considered attractive. She's the first to admit that she needed help along the way. While a link between smoking and lung cancer had been established years before, the practice was still widespread. In 1964, the Surgeon General warned that cigarette smoking is a health hazard of sufficient importance in the United States to warrant appropriate remedial action. In spite of such warnings, smoking was largely considered to be glamorous and sophisticated. She told Glamour, "I kept auditioning, with no savings and no money, credit card debt gaining interest. I went on unemployment. I bought ramen noodles at dollar stores." The tobacco industry targeted women in the 1960s, taking advantage of the growing feminist movement by portraying smoking as the pinnacle of gender equality. "I never had to, God forbid, live on the streets. I moved in with a roommate who told me, stay with me until you can afford rent. Don't give up. People who supported me were like, if you don't have money for food, I'll cook you dinner. You don't have money for acting class? Let's get together and read lines." It was this support system that helped Metz through the tough times. When she booked This Is Us, the actress had 81 cents in her bank account. And then life changed quickly. But what makes Metz so fabulous is that even though her fortune changed, her attitude has not. Virginia Slims were launched as a women's cigarette in 1968, with the slogan, "You've come a long way baby." Other cigarette ads from the late 1960s show young, attractive women partaking in what is shown as an elegant pastime, conveying the message that women who smoked were refined and sexy. Unemployment by the late 1960s, more women were working than ever. She told the magazine, "You may think, ooh, you're on TV, you're a millionaire. No. It's definitely a lot more than I was making, but I still live with my roommate, though I pay my proper share of the rent now. Meeting my car payment on time? That's new." While they were making great economic strides, working women faced a certain stigma. It was far more acceptable for single women to work than married women, as a woman's primary duty was still expected to be to her family. "I paid my friends and my stepdad back. And 3 months ago I finally paid my credit cards off. Funny, but I still get buyer's remorse. I just got my first pair of Alexander McQueen shoes. I'm so convinced I shouldn't have bought them, I still haven't busted them out of the box." She knew Kate was the role for her. It's near impossible to picture anyone else playing Kate Pearson on This Is Us, but how did the role come about for Metz? She had to push for the opportunity and knew this project was special from the very beginning. As Metz described to Deadline, "The script was incredible from the moment I started it, it felt different." In 1967, just 44% of married American couples lived in dual-income households, compared to more than half of married couples today. Working wives and mothers were thought to destabilize home life and their families. History professor Stephanie Kuntz told the Harvard Business Review that middle-class women were the most stigmatized, and that if they did choose to enter the workforce they were expected to wait until their children had grown. "I desperately wanted an audition and begged my agent for the opportunity to read for casting. And these women, it is hard for modern people to understand just how insecure, how depressed, how low the self-esteem was of these stay-at-home moms in those days," she said. Leg makeup. The rise of the miniskirt meant that women felt the pressure to put their best leg forward. This was a role that finally broke down the real issues behind weight, inadequacy, codependent relationships and living in the shadows. And when that audition finally happened, the room felt right to Metz, who continued on to say, "The callback, which I didn't think was coming, was unlike any other I had ever experienced. Glenn Picara even asked me to grab my purse out of the lobby and walk into the scene through the door." By the mid-1960s, a new trend was emerging, leg makeup. It was as if they were already directing me. Weight loss isn't a requirement in her contract. Although there has been speculation regarding the details of Metz's This Is Us contract, she clarified to People that her contract does not state she has to lose weight. However, Metz understands her character and journey and seems happy to have the motivation to be healthy. She told the magazine, "Why not have a motivation beyond me to get to a healthy weight? Every actor does that. We're chameleons. We change, we grow as an actor." Makeup had been used on legs before, perhaps most notably during World War II when a shortage of stockings propelled women to draw on stocking seams with eyeliner to make it look like their legs weren't bare. You lose weight, you gain weight, you change your hair or whatever. And how does this make being healthy easier? Accountability and support. Speaking with TV Line, Metz shared that as humans we're more likely to do something for someone else. But even with this incentive, Metz wants to make one thing clear: this is all about health. The leg makeup of the 1960s, however, was primarily used to cover up flaws that were now exposed thanks to the shorter hemlines of the era. Women would carefully apply makeup to their legs to cover up blemishes before putting on hosiery. Bruises, scars, and other imperfections were covered up with cosmetics, and then further concealed with stockings. The use of leg makeup shows just how conflicted women in this era were. The women's liberation movement was empowering females, and women were beginning to embrace their bodies, but many of them still felt the pressure to conform to society's beauty standards. Athletic skills. Athletic women were in at the end of the 1960s, but not for the reason that you might think. She said, "I just have to be very clear. Whether or not I lose weight or stay the same, it's purely a choice of mine for health. Not because I think that plus size, curvy, voluptuous, big bodies aren't attractive, because I think they're awesome and sexy. You go, girl." Metz is someone who is beautiful both on the inside and out, and we can't wait to read more interviews and get a look at her character's journey on This Is Us. She believes everything happens for a reason. Although Metz has had to go through some tough times and struggles to get to where she is today, she has no regrets. She firmly believes everything happens for a reason. She told THR, "The trajectory is that Kate will be losing weight just as I will in real life to reflect the character in her arc and her journey." Athletics were viewed as a way for women to maintain attractive figures. "That's exciting for me, especially because losing weight is something I've struggled with and contemplated. I have lost weight and I've gained weight back. I wouldn't have this amazing role if I'd already lost all the weight." Women became more active in sports in the 1960s, especially in high schools and colleges, although women's sports were not considered to be on par with men's sports. A woman with an athletic physique was considered attractive, but female athletes had a long way to go to be accepted in society. It wasn't until 1972 that the U.S. So I have to believe that everything happens for a reason, and I do feel that way in life. With such a positive and open attitude, the actress is ready to tackle the tougher issues on the show. As Metz explained to THR, "I have friends and I know that when you do lose weight, you're happy and it's exciting, but there are other things going on. There are other things that make us want to eat or overspend or fill a void with something." Congress passed Title X, which helps secure funding for women's sports. And so as she, Kate, loses the weight and puts the food down, a lot of other things start to come up, which happens in real life. It's going to be really fascinating to watch that unfold on a lot of different levels. She knows life can't be perfect. Many of the storylines on This Is Us have hit on very real topics, ones that feel so casual but tend to bring out even more emotion than the most dramatic scenes do. Metz's character of Kate struggles with the fact that her boyfriend is able to lose weight faster than her, even though it was her idea to lose the weight in the first place. The first female athlete to appear on the cover of Sports Illustrated, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, didn't do so until 1987. Metz understands this feeling and addressed it during her interview with THR. "You get frustrated. While female athletes today are considered strong and capable role models, the female athletes of the 1960s were largely viewed as hobbyists whose pastimes were only indulged in order to help them remain slim. Not that it's a positive way to counteract the lack of weight loss by binging or having a little snack, but at some point you just can't beat yourself up because it's counterproductive." When Metz gets down to it, she says, "Nothing is ever going to be perfect." In the interview, she went on to explain her thoughts. "We have to learn to celebrate the victories but not hold onto the shame that we have of not doing something fast enough or quickly enough or the right way. Everything in life has its flows and ups and downs." Sounding like a great role model to look up to, the actress continued, "We're all works in progress and not everything is going to be perfect all the time. It's important to show that."
She wants to show fans they aren't alone. This Is Us is a show that not only places important topics in the spotlight, but also teaches its audience about other worlds and perspectives. Metz summed this up perfectly during an interview with The Wrap, saying, "I think we fear what we don't know. The show is educating people in that people who are overweight don't just sit in a corner eating themselves into oblivion. The food is the symptom, it's not the issue. When you put the food down, the issues come up. And that's what we need to be talking about. And the show does more than teach its audience, it comforts them as well. And that is exactly what Metz wants for the viewers." She continued, "That's why we create art and movies and television, because someone somewhere needs to know that they're not alone." She is unapologetically herself as Metz continues to be a voice for women around the world. She speaks out for herself as well. According to People, after her appearance in an adorable, latex red dress at the MTV Movie and TV Awards in May 2017, she received some negative comments on social media about her look. After seeing the negative posts, she decided to speak up about her choice, leaving it all on the table. She tweeted, "For the record, I wear what I want, when I want. News flash, it's my body. Thanks though. It's not easy to deal with upsetting comments on social media, but Metz knows who she is and loves herself for it." She and her TV character share a passion for singing. Viewers first got a look at Metz's serious singing talent during an episode in Season 1 of This Is Us. And now, according to TV Guide, it looks like singing will be a big part of her character's future in Season 2. Metz spoke about this revelation and her character's goals of being a singer. She said, "I think Kate's got a little soul in her. She likes some throwback, Motown stuff. I know for me, I love every genre of music. I'm excited to see where they're going to go with it." And as Metz shared at Variety's TV Summit via Fox News in June 2017, this is more than a plotline, but a dream for the actress. "Yeah, I mean, like Kate, I never really was encouraged to sing but always wanted to, so it's like my dreams are really coming true, and to potentially sing with my TV mom Mandy Moore would be incredible. That would be incredible, and I think music is such a beautiful art form and it's so healing. Everyone can relate in some way. Life may never be perfect, but what makes Metz and her show This Is Us so special is the vulnerability shown each week. This display of emotion gives the audience a chance to see these characters for who they are." Speaking on the Ellen DeGeneres Show via ET, Metz said, "I think everyone has shame about something, whether it's a lack of a relationship with a child or maybe their weight or a lack of communication within their marriage. Everyone can relate to that." Metz, in particular, has been so open about her own journey in life that it seems near impossible to not relate with her on any topic that comes up. And her fans have been pretty vocal about their support and feelings. As she told Glamour, "I've had women, average women, older women, teenagers, who say to me, 'Your role in this show has changed my life. That makes all the struggle, all the ramen noodles, all the times when I couldn't pay my bills, all the times where I was like, I can't do this, worth it.' And don't think that all of this success is going to change her. She's grounded and intends to stay that way." She told the magazine, "Sometimes I cry on the way to the set still. There is something that happens when you are grateful, you continue to keep receiving blessings. So I will always be grateful. We couldn't have said it any better."